speak in front of all of you today. So for those of you that might not know me, I am 18 years old and a senior at Glenboro North High School. I love spending time with my family and my friends, and I also have a passion for the game of softball. I also enjoy painting and watching movies. So if you haven't seen A League of Their Own starring Tom Hanks and Gina Davis, you all have homework for the week. It's my favorite movie. Yeah. So I also enjoy volunteering and participating in extracurricular activities at my school. And I was also baptized in this church when I was only 18 months old, and I'm beyond grateful for all of you, my church family. So today's scripture from John chapter 9, verses 1 through 11, teaches us many powerful lessons. We learn how we should respond to life's difficulties, and it also helps us understand the reasons for suffering in this world. John chapter 9 begins with Jesus and his disciples walking along when they come across a man who was born blind. Jesus notices the man, stops, and walks towards him. It is also important to remember that Jesus was fleeing from an angry mob at the time who wanted to harm him. But that did not stop Jesus from noticing this blind man. It is also important to know that during the time of Christ, the blind and all other people with physical differences were considered a burden, which meant they were often abandoned by their families and begged for food and money in the street to survive. They had no wealth, no power, and were seen as the lowest class in society. Many might question why. Why did Jesus notice the blind man? That is because Jesus is different. The Bible tells us that not even a baby bird falls to the ground without God knowing it. This is assurance that God sees us no matter who we are. He cares for each of us, regardless of our differences, and he wants a close relationship with us. However, it is up to us to accept Jesus' invitation. The disciples that were walking with Jesus asked him who had sinned, the blind man or the man's parents. They assumed that just because this blind man was suffering, he must have done something bad to deserve it. It had to be done something in the womb or something done by his parents. That is what they assumed. However, Jesus responds to this question. He answered by saying it was not the fault of the blind man nor his parents. It happened so that the work of God should be revealed in him. So does that mean that God made the man blind so he could later heal him? The answer is no. God does not work that way. God takes what has happened and turns it into good. Each of us has a unique story of God working in our lives. And I believe that none of us fully know the plans that God has for us. At times, we may encounter doubt as we tell our stories. But we grow closer to God as we share the story of what he is doing in our lives. Jesus then spit on the ground and made mud with his saliva. He put it on the man's eyes, and he told the blind man to go and wash. The man went and washed and returned, able to see. So when I was young and first heard this scripture story, I thought it was kind of weird and a bit, and to be honest, a bit gross that Jesus did this. I thought he could have said something to the man or touched him to heal him from his blindness. So why did Jesus use his saliva? Some believe that Jesus wanted others to see the different ways that Jesus was able to heal people. He could do anything and still accomplish what he wanted to do for this man. Others explain by saying Jesus uses a different approach with each person he heals. He may heal some with a word, a touch, a prayer. Some he may heal from a distance, some in private, or some in public. He may heal people. But what we know for sure is that Jesus has a reason and a purpose for all of his actions. Now, what the blind man saw as a curse, he now saw as a blessing. This man was blind from birth. He had every reason to be angry with God and question his love. Now, last Sunday in Sunday school, our group was discussing this very topic. Why do bad things happen to good people? The real answer to this question is, I don't know. Nobody does. But hopefully these next few stories I'm going to share with us will give some clarity and help us make sense of this difficult and loaded question. Now, this past Monday, my mom and I were talking about the scripture, specifically how hard it is to watch people in our lives suffering and in pain. My mom awoke the next morning and shared with me the dream that she had about my aunt that passed away 7 years ago at the age of 61. I truly believe that my mom's dream did not happen by chance. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about my Aunt Esther before I got into her story. I was fortunate enough to have her in my life for 11 years, and she was one of the greatest individuals I have ever known. She was sweet, loving, compassionate, funny, and was so hopeful about life. Now, what I also want you to know about her is that she struggled with her health from a very young age. Hospitals were unfortunately very familiar to her, but all she ever talked about was how amazing the doctors and nurses were, especially before and after her kidney and pancreas transplants. She had more procedures and surgeries than anyone should ever have to go through. Her body was in pain, but she always wanted to know what she could do to help someone else. And I never once heard her ask, why me? My Aunt Esther had an incredible faith in God, and she believed in the power of miracle and prayers. So I wanted to share a few of the sentiments people shared with our family after her passing. Esther was a very special person. She found the good in everyone and everything. She was the most positive person I know. Esther was the best of the best. Her smile was contagious. She was beautiful inside and out. She was a light in my life. So my purpose in telling my Aunt Esther's story is to remind us that even when our lives are filled with darkness and despair, we should never give in to the hurt and pain we feel, because God has a plan for all of us, and I believe He will do right by us in the end. So this is one of the hardest lessons for us to learn and for God to teach us, especially when horrible things happen to people. But like in the scripture, the blind man never questioned his ailment. He had faith, and God provided for him. I have full confidence that God will do the same for all of us.
Amen.
Now, what if we thought about blindness in a different way? Instead of associating blindness with the quality of our eyesight or the darkness around us, we thought of it as the darkness within us. True seeing begins in the heart and not the eyes. Now, I want to share a time when I personally experienced doubt and darkness. My sophomore year in high school, I suffered a back injury that put my life on hold. I was in constant physical pain and could not play softball, which was one of the most important things in my life at the time. In addition, I had a kidney surgery around that same time to correct a very painful problem that I had been dealing with for a majority of my life. During this time, I often thought, why me? Or what have I done to deserve this? It took me a long time to realize it, but I had really not done anything wrong. And I now believe that God was trying to teach me something that He could not teach me in any other way. Through this injury, I discovered what my true passions were. I found out that I have a love for community service, advocacy work, and helping people in ways that go beyond what I could accomplish simply on the softball field. I poured myself into my other passions and found out what was truly important to me. Through this experience, I have learned that true vision comes from what you have inside you and how you share it with others. Now, God sees all of us, no matter how great or small our problems may be. And He has a plan for all of us. Difficulties in life are inevitable, but it is how we respond to them and how we trust in God that makes a difference. Now, each of us has a story to tell, a lesson to teach, and wisdom to share. Life is a beautiful masterpiece bound together by our shared experiences. So I encourage us all to open up, share our stories, keep the faith, and become an inspiration to others. And we can all make a difference because we all matter. We were all created with God, by God, with a purpose. And no matter how difficult things may be right now, God's love is everlasting and will sustain us. So let's all live our lives with intention. Let's go out there and make a difference by being the difference. Let's open our eyes by first opening our hearts. Thank you.
Amen.